There's a question almost everyone answers without thinking. So, what did you get up to this weekend? And there's a certain kind of person who has an answer ready before you finish asking. Rehearsed, vague. Just specific enough to move the conversation along. That answer is a cover story. And they have been using it for years. Most people assume that someone with no friends must be difficult, awkward, broken in some quiet way. Psychology found almost the exact opposite. The real signs are rarely the ones you would expect, and the person showing them is often the most capable person in the room. By the end of this, you'll know all 7 signs and the precise psychological mechanism sitting underneath each one, including the sign that nearly everybody misreads as arrogance. Let's be clear about the scale of this first. Having no friends is not rare, and it is not a character defect. In the United States, roughly 1 in 8 adults now report having no close friends at all. That number has quadrupled since 1990. This is not a fringe experience. It is a mass one. And the person living it usually looks completely fine. He has a job, colleagues who genuinely like him, a phone with 400 contacts in it. He gets invited to things. He shows up. Sometimes what he does not have is one single person he could call at 2 a.m. without rehearsing the first sentence. He can go 4 days without a conversation that isn't transactional. He knows this. He stopped mentioning it a long time ago. Julianne Holt-Lunstad, a psychologist at Brigham Young University, ran a meta-analysis across more than 3 million people, and what she found reframed an entire field. Social isolation raised the risk of early death by around 30%, placing it in the same tier of risk as smoking and obesity. Friendship stopped being a lifestyle preference that day. It became a health variable. We're going to walk through 7 signs, ordered deliberately, from the one that looks completely harmless to the one that quietly explains all the others. Let's start with the sign almost nobody counts as a warning. Sign 1. They are unusually impressively good at being alone. They don't get bored. Give them an empty Saturday, and they fill it properly with something absorbing, and they emerge on Sunday looking rested rather than restless. Thuy Nguyen, a researcher at Durham University, studies solitude as a skill rather than a symptom. Her work found that deliberate time alone reliably lowers high arousal emotions. It cools you down. Anger fades, anxiety flattens, the nervous system settles. But here's the part that matters. That capacity is trainable. It strengthens with use, like anything else. Someone who has spent 5 years mostly alone becomes genuinely excellent at it. So the first sign isn't misery. It's competence. They become so skilled at solitude that the internal alarm, which should be telling them something is missing, has gone completely quiet. And that's the trap hiding inside a genuine strength. Nguyen draws a hard line between solitude that is chosen and solitude that is simply left over at the end of a week. Chosen solitude restores you. Default solitude just feels like chosen solitude, because you've stopped noticing there was ever a choice involved. But being good at alone is only the surface. What happens the moment they are not alone? That's where this gets revealing. Sign 2. In conversation, they either flood or they freeze. Watch them carefully with a group. The words come out in a rush, too much detail, too fast, running past the point where a listener would normally take a turn, or the opposite. They go almost entirely silent and let everyone else carry it. Robin Dunbar, the evolutionary psychologist at Oxford, describes human conversation as a form of social grooming. It's the primate behavior we replaced with speech, and like grooming, it depends on rhythm. The average gap between one speaker finishing and the next beginning is roughly 200 milliseconds. That timing is not intelligence, it's practice, and practice decays. So, when connection is scarce, every single conversation starts carrying too much weight. It stops being a casual exchange and becomes an audition. And nobody performs well in an audition they didn't know they were walking into. Now here's where it gets more complicated, because this next sign is the one that hides the problem from everybody, including the person living it. Sign 3. Their contact list is full and their emergency contact line is blank. They know a lot of people. They're on good terms with almost all of them. They could get a drink with someone this Friday if they really pushed. What they cannot do is name the person who would sit in a hospital waiting room for them. Mark Granovetter, the sociologist behind The Strength of Weak Ties, showed that loose acquaintances are genuinely powerful. They bring you jobs, information, and opportunities that your close circle never could. Weak ties are not worthless. They are just structurally incapable of doing what a strong tie does. And Jeffrey Hall at the University of Kansas put real numbers on the gap. It takes roughly 50 hours together to become a casual friend and around 200 hours to become a close one. So this person isn't unlikable. They're time poor in a very specific way. They have collected 50 relationships worth 10 hours each instead of 3 relationships worth 200. And that arithmetic is brutal in adulthood. Hall found that most of those hours have to be unstructured. Not meetings, not organized events with a start time and a purpose. Just hanging around with no agenda, which is precisely the category of time a working adult has least of. And this next one? The people around them get it completely wrong almost every time. Sign 4. They come across as cold, aloof, or somehow above it all. They're the one who leaves the party without saying goodbye, who takes 6 hours to answer a friendly text, who says no to the invitation and doesn't offer a reason. Erica Boothby and her colleagues at Cornell documented something they named the liking gap. After a conversation with a stranger, people consistently underestimate how much the other person actually liked them and how much that person wants to speak to them again. The gap doesn't close quickly either. It persisted between dorm mates for months. Now stack that on top of isolation. With no recent evidence that people enjoy their company, they read a neutral face as disinterest and a slow reply as a verdict. So they withdraw first, not out of superiority, out of self-protection that happens to look identical to it from the outside. If you're the kind of person who actually thinks about what's happening underneath someone's behavior and not just the behavior itself, and you're still here, that tells me something about you. It would mean a lot if you hit subscribe. We put out videos like this every week. Real psychology, explained in a way that finally makes sense. Now here's the part that doesn't get talked about nearly enough, and it matters more than everything before it. Sign 5. They are tired in a way that sleep doesn't fix. They get sick more often than they should. They wake at 3 in the morning for no reason they can name. They describe themselves as run down, and their blood work comes back completely normal. John Cacioppo, the neuroscientist who essentially founded the field of social neuroscience, argued that loneliness is a biological alarm, exactly like hunger or thirst. It exists to push a social animal back toward the group. When that alarm goes unanswered for years, the body shifts into a defensive state. It scans for social threat automatically, detecting rejection cues faster than a connected brain does. And critically, sleep fragments. Cacioppo found lonely people experience more micro-awakenings through the night because on some ancient level, sleeping without your group is not safe. So the exhaustion is not laziness, and it is not depression alone. It's a body holding a night watch that was never meant to be held by one person. And this is why willpower doesn't touch it. You cannot decide your way out of a threat detection system that has been running unopposed for years. The alarm doesn't switch off because you've reasoned with it. It switches off when the group comes back. But this is the root underneath every sign so far. Sign 6. They leave first. Every single time. The friendship is going well. It's warm, it's easy. And then they get quieter. They take longer to reply. They let it drift, and afterwards they'll tell you the other person faded out. From where they were standing, that is exactly what it felt like. Developmental psychologists trace this to attachment. Building on John Bowlby's work, researchers describe an avoidant pattern that forms when early care was unpredictable. The child learns something efficient and permanent. Needing people is the dangerous part. Self-reliance is safety. That belief doesn't announce itself in adulthood. It just makes closeness feel faintly like a risk you can't justify. And it becomes self-fulfilling. Someone who expects to be dropped behaves in ways that make being dropped far more likely than the outcome arrives. And it looks like proof. Which brings us to the last one. And honestly, it's the most important. Sign 7. When someone finally does get in, they go impossibly deep. No small talk, no warm-up period. Within one conversation, they're asking what you're actually afraid of and answering it themselves first. Robert Zajonc demonstrated decades ago that liking is built mostly by mere exposure. Repetition without agenda. Being in the same room, on the same day for no particular reason. That is the entire mechanism, and adulthood is what removes the structures that used to provide it, which means the fix was never charisma or confidence. It's proximity repeated on a schedule. A gym at the same hour, the same table, the same Thursday. And their capacity for depth is not a consolation prize. It's the rarest thing in the room. Most people never learn to go past the surface because they never had to. Years of thinking without an audience produces someone who is genuinely worth knowing, and the only thing missing is the boring, repeated exposure that lets anyone find that out. So the next time you meet someone with a rehearsed answer about their weekend, you'll know what you're actually looking at. You're looking at someone who got too good at being alone for the alarm to still work. Someone whose conversational timing went rusty from disuse, not from arrogance. Someone running a night watch by themselves and calling it being run down. They aren't unlikable. They're under-practiced. And the difference between those two words is the difference between a permanent identity and a solvable problem. Friendship was never built out of charisma. It was built out of hours, which means the only thing standing between this person and a real friend is repetition in the same place until someone stops being a stranger. If that landed, I made a video on why modern friendships fail and what actually rebuilds them. It's right here whenever you're ready.